The galaxy was ruled by the Council, a circle of ancient and powerful alien races. They claimed to stand for peace, wisdom, and unity, but behind their bright words was only control. For thousands of years, no young race had ever been allowed to grow too strong. Whenever a world began to rise, the Council found a way to push it back down. And then came Earth. Humanity entered the stars late compared to others, but they moved fast. They were clever, hungry, and stubborn. They did not always agree among themselves, but when faced with outsiders, they stood together. Within a short time, Earth had colonies, trade routes, and a fleet of their own. The Council was surprised, then worried, then afraid. In the grand hall of the Council, voices rose against humanity. Some aliens spoke of fear, others of anger. "They are too dangerous," one voice said. "They fight even when peace is offered. They will not bow to our laws." Another cried, "They will not kneel." But there were some who defended humanity. "They bring new ideas, new energy. They are not a threat," a few argued. Yet the fear was stronger than reason. The vote was taken, and the result was exile. Earth was cast out of the Council. All treaties were broken. All trade was cut. Human ships were denied entry into alien ports. Human diplomats were ignored. The Council declared Earth an isolated world. They believed this would end the rise of humanity. The news struck Earth like a thunderbolt. There was anger, there was grief, there was fear. On the streets of cities, people shouted, asking why. On the colonies, voices trembled, wondering if they would survive without Council protection. Even some leaders doubted. "How can we stand against the whole galaxy?" they asked, but not everyone lost hope. In the shadows of power, a different voice rose, a commander who had seen the way the Council worked. He looked at the gunmen. "Exile not as an end, but as the beginning. The Council fears us because they see the truth," he said. "They know we are not weak. They know we do not break." He spoke not of surrender, but of survival, not of silence, but of building something new. Secret meetings began. Nations that had once argued now shared the same table. Generals and scientists, engineers and workers, all gathered. "We will not fade," they whispered. "We will not vanish." Plans were made, hidden factories were built, old mines under the mountains roared to life, shipyards in orbit lit their forges. The Council thought humanity was beaten, but the fire of Earth was only starting to burn. Rumors spread across the colonies. People spoke of a hidden fleet being built. They spoke of weapons stronger than ever before. They spoke of leaders who would no longer bow. The Council dismissed these whispers. They believed humanity was too small, too divided. They believed Earth would eat itself in fear, but they did not understand what exile had truly done. Exile had united humanity. The nations of Earth, once bitter rivals, began to share resources. Old grudges were set aside for survival. Scientists worked side by side. Soldiers trained together. Factories turned from producing luxury goods to forging steel and weapons. The spirit of war, of struggle, filled the air. Still, there was fear. Every night, people looked up at the stars and wondered if a Council fleet was already on its way. Every family asked what would happen when the aliens came to finish the work. Would Earth burn? Would their colonies be destroyed? But in that fear there was also strength, because every person knew they had no one else to save them. If Earth was to survive, it would survive by its own hands. The commander stood before the first secret ship as it was completed. Its dark hull gleamed. Its engines whispered with power. It was not large, not yet, but it was a start. He placed his hand on the metal and spoke. "This is not the end of Earth," he said. "This is the birth of something greater."
His voice carried through the halls, through the workers, through the hidden channels of the colonies, and everywhere humanity began to believe the Council thought they had cast Earth into silence, but in truth they had given humanity a reason to fight, a reason to grow, a reason to rise higher than ever before. The exile was not the fall of Earth, it was the spark that would one day light the fires of an armada. And from that armada would come an empire that would not only survive, but would one day rule the stars. Earth had been exiled, but Earth was not broken. From the ashes of shame came the first sparks of fire, and that fire began to spread in the great cities of Earth. Lights still burned, factories worked through the night, hidden from the Council's eyes. Ships that once carried goods were stripped and reforged into something new. Engines were tested in secret hangars, weapons were designed in hidden labs. The world that was supposed to stay silent now roared in whispers. Every whisper spoke of resistance, of survival, of war. The commander who had spoken against the Council now stood as the voice of humanity. He was not a king, not a dictator, but his words carried weight. He spoke with calm fire, and people listened. "The Council cast us out," he said. "They thought we would bow, they thought we would starve, they thought we would break." He paused, his voice like steel. They were wrong. These words spread far beyond Earth. On the colonies where fear had grown like poison, a new strength began to rise. Miners on the moon sang old Earth songs as they dug deeper for metal. Scientists on Mars tested weapons under the red skies. Farmers on Europa shared their food with shipyard workers. Each colony gave what it could. Each person found a purpose. The exile had turned humanity into one, but the Council was not blind. Their spies whispered of secret factories and growing fleets. Alien admirals laughed at the idea of humans building warships. "They have no experience," one said. "They are children in the stars. They will tear themselves apart," another mocked. But still the Council watched, and still Earth built. The first ships of the hidden Armada were small, frigates fast and sharp, built for speed and survival. They were not as large as Council cruisers, not as powerful as alien dreadnoughts, but they carried something no alien ship had. They carried the will of humanity, and when they were tested in the black void of space, they did not fail. The commander watched the first trial from the control deck. Engines burned bright, weapons fired true, shields held strong. The crew cheered, but the commander raised his hand. "This is only the beginning," he said. "If we are to survive, we must build not one ship, not 10, but hundreds, thousands." His words lit the hearts of those who listened. They knew their path was hard, but they also knew it was the only path left. And then came the first test of war. Pirates, hearing of Earth's exile, thought it weak. They came in black ships with blood-red marks, hunting trade routes, burning colonies. They thought no one could stop them. But they were wrong. One night above Titan's icy skies, the first human frigates met the pirates. Engines screamed, cannons roared. For the first time since exile, humanity fought not with fear, but with fury. The battle was fierce, fire lighting the void, but the pirates were not facing broken people. They were facing a people reborn. When the last pirate ship burned, the crew of the human frigates did not celebrate. They only sent one message back to Earth. We are ready. The council heard of this victory. They dismissed it as luck, as chance, but some among them began to worry if humanity could defeat pirates with only a handful of ships. What would happen if they built more? What would happen if they rose again? The seeds of fear were planted once more. On Earth, the commander stood before the shipyards. Hundreds of frames hung in orbit, skeletons of ships waiting to be born. He looked at the workers, at the soldiers, at the young recruits. You are the fire, he told them. You are the ash turned into steel. You are the voice that will never be silent. And the people believed. Every hammer strike rang like thunder. Every bolt was a promise that Earth would not fall again. But even as the Armada grew, shadows thickened. The council was preparing. Scouts were sent to watch. Spies moved through colonies, and in secret chambers alien leaders whispered, "If humanity rises again, they will challenge our rule. They must be crushed before they become too strong." Plans were made, fleets were gathered, a storm was coming, yet humanity did not slow. The exile had given them purpose, the victory had given them hope, and now the fire of Earth burned brighter than ever before. In every factory, every shipyard, every training ground, the same thought echoed. We will not bow, we will not break, we will rise. The council believed they had thrown Earth into the ashes, but in truth they had forged fire. And that fire was shaping an armada that would one day change the fate of the galaxy. The pirates had fallen, but the war had only begun. The hidden frigates of Earth had tasted battle, and they had won. Yet victory brought not rest, but a greater hunger, the hunger to build more, to rise higher, to prepare for what was coming. Above Earth, the shipyards glowed like a second sun. Frames of steel stretched across the black sky, skeletons waiting for life. Engines were lowered into place, armor plates welded, weapons tested. Every day new ships were born. Every night more designs were drafted. The sound of hammer and flame echoed even in the silence of space. It was the birth cry of an Armada command. Walked among the workers, not as a distant ruler, but as one of them. He wore no crown, no golden armor, only the uniform of a soldier. His hands touched the steel. His eyes studied the progress. When workers grew tired, his voice lifted them. When you strike metal, you are not building a ship, he said. You are building the shield of your children, the sword of your people, the future of humanity. The workers cheered and their hands moved faster. Every rivet was driven with pride, every weld made with purpose. But the council had begun to move. They could no longer ignore the whispers, the reports, the rumors. Scouts were sent closer to Earth. Alien eyes watched from the dark. One by one, strange signals were caught on human radars. Unmarked ships lurking just outside the colonies. The council was watching, measuring, waiting. The commander knew it. He called the admirals and the generals to the war room. On the table lay star maps, dotted with colonies, trade routes, and council positions. "They will come," he said, his voice calm. "The council does not forgive. The council does not forget. They will strike." A silence fell, heavy and sharp. Then he placed his hand on the map of Earth. "And when they come, they will not find us weak." The new fleet was unlike anything the galaxy had seen. Human ships were not smooth and elegant like alien cruisers. They were brutal, sharp, made of steel and function. They carried thick armor where alien ships carried beauty. They carried missiles and cannons where others carried ceremony. They were not ships of peace, they were ships of survival, and survival made them powerful. The first true battle group was assembled, 10 frigates, 3 destroyers, and 1 heavy cruiser. The cruiser was the pride of Earth, a beast of metal named Vigilant. Its hull was layered in armor, its guns stretched across its sides like the claws of a predator. When it left the shipyard, people across Earth stopped to watch. Crowds gathered in cities, children pointed to the sky. For the first time since exile, hope filled their eyes. But hope was not enough. The Council's shadow stretched long, and soon the first test arrived. A Council scout fleet slipped into the Sol system, 5 ships. Small but armed, they had not come to fight, only to spy, but the commander saw them for what they were. The eyes of the enemy, he gave the order. No witnesses, no warnings, Earth must remain hidden. The frigates moved like wolves, silent and swift. Engines flared, missiles streaked across the void. The scout ships tried to flee, their alien shields sparking against human fire, but the humans did not relent. One by one, the Council scouts were torn apart. The battle lasted minutes, and then silence returned. The crews cheered, but the commander did not. He stared at the burning wrecks and knew what it meant. The Council would know. The Council would learn that Earth had not stayed down, and when they learned, they would come with fleets far greater than scouts. Still, the commander saw a chance. The wrecks were not wasted. Teams boarded the broken Council ships, stripping their tech, copying their designs. Human engineers bent over alien consoles, learning, adapting, reshaping. The Armada grew not only in size but in knowledge. Every battle, every scrap of metal, every captured weapon made Earth stronger. Rumors began to spread across the stars. Smugglers whispered of human fleets. Traders spoke of secret victories. Oppressed alien races listened and hoped, for they too had suffered under the Council's iron rule. And some began to wonder. Could Earth be the spark that lit their own freedom? But with hope came danger. The Council gathered its fleets, meeting in dark chambers. "The humans defy us," one elder snarled. "They must be crushed before others follow them." "They are nothing but fire in the ashes," another hissed. "We will drown that fire in blood." Plans were drawn. Fleets were ordered to prepare. A storm was gathering, and its path pointed straight to Earth. The commander stood on the bridge of the Vigilant. Stars burned outside, cold and eternal. He looked at his officers, young men and women with fire in their eyes. "They think we are weak," he said softly. "They think we will break. They think exile will kill us." His voice grew louder, like thunder rolling through the ship. "But they are wrong. They have always been wrong." He raised his hand, and the crew stood straighter. "They exiled us, but they gave us unity. They gave us strength. They gave us purpose. And with that purpose, we will build an armada that will shake the stars." The fleet of Earth, still young, still growing, waited in the black, every ship a promise, every soldier a vow. The Council believed they had ended humanity, but in truth, they had only forged something new, something greater, something more dangerous than they ever feared. The birth of the Armada had come, and with it, the first shadows of war. The Council could no longer pretend. They had seen the wreckage of their scouts. They had heard the whispers across the galaxy. Humanity had not broken. Humanity had not faded. Instead, in the silence of exile, Earth had forged steel and fire. Now the Council prepared to crush them. Fleets were gathered from across 100 alien worlds, ships larger than cities, bristling with weapons, carriers filled with swarms of fighters, cruisers heavy with cannons. It was a storm of war, and it was pointed straight at Earth. In the Grand Hall, Council leaders declared, "This rebellion must end. Humanity must burn. Earth will serve as an example to all who dare defy us." But in secret, not all agreed. There were alien races who had suffered under the Council's rule. They had watched their own worlds taxed, starved, and silenced. And when they heard that Earth was building an armor, some began to hope. A few sent messages hidden in shadows, offers of fuel, food, and information, not because they loved humanity, but because they hated the Council more. On Earth, the commander prepared. He knew the storm was coming. Every ship that could fly was made ready, every weapon polished, every soldier trained. From the smallest shuttle to the mighty Vigilant, the fleet waited. In orbit, the Armada looked like a sea of fire, ships burning against the void. This was no longer a whisper. This was no longer a secret. Humanity was ready for war. The Council fleet arrived at the edge of Sol. Thousands of ships, a wall of death. They moved like a tide, their engines glowing, their weapons charged. The galaxy watched in silence. Everyone believed Earth would be swept away, for how could one young race face the might of the galaxy? But the commander did not fear. He stood on the bridge of the Vigilant, eyes calm, voice steady. "They think we are small. They think we are weak. They think we will bow," he said. "Today we show them the truth. Today we show them what it means to be human." The first battle began near Neptune. The Council fleet pushed forward, but the humans had prepared traps. Hidden mines drifted in the dark, waiting. When the aliens advanced, the mines ignited, tearing through their front lines. Explosions lit the void, ships burning in silence. The aliens were shocked, but they pressed on. Then the human frigates struck. Darting like wolves, they fired missiles in swarms, vanishing before the Council could lock on. It was not brute force. It was cunning, and for the first time the mighty Council bled. But victory came with cost. Human ships burned too. Young soldiers gave their lives. The commander watched as names appeared on the casualty lists. Every loss was a wound, but every loss also hardened him. "We will not stop," he whispered. "For every ship they take, we will build 2 more. For every soldier they kill, 10 will rise." The battle moved closer to Mars. The red planet shook under bombardment, but its defenses held. Missile silos hidden under the soil opened. Fire streaked across the sky. Council cruisers shattered, their wreckage falling into the dust. On the ground, colonists cheered, shouting to the heavens. Earth fights, Mars fights, humanity fights. But the Council was vast and their numbers endless. Wave after wave poured forward. The humans were clever, but they were outnumbered. The commander knew they could not simply defend. To survive, they had to strike at the heart. He called his admirals, his generals, his captains. On the war map, the Council fleet glowed like a burning sea. At its center was the flagship, a monstrous dreadnought, larger than any city. It was the command ship, the symbol of Council power. "If we cut off the head," the commander said, "the body will stumble." The plan was dangerous, almost madness. But humanity had always thrived in madness. The fleet divided. Frigates and destroyers drew the Council into battle. Missiles screamed. Cannons thundered. Meanwhile, the Vigilant and a small group of ships cut through the chaos. They slipped past burning wrecks, through clouds of fire and debris, straight toward the dreadnought. The Council commander laughed when he saw them. "Foolish humans," he hissed. "They bring toys against giants." But his laugh died when the Vigilant opened fire. Its cannons roared, its missiles struck, its railguns hammered. The human cruiser fought like a beast, tearing through the dreadnought's shields. The Council ship struck back, beams slicing across the void. The Vigilant shook, its hull burning, alarms screaming. Still it pressed on, still it fired. Inside the ship, corridors filled with smoke, crew rushing to keep systems alive. Every hand worked, every soul fought on the bridge. The commander stood like stone. "Forward," he said. "Never stop." Finally, with one last strike, the dreadnought's core erupted. A sun was born in the darkness, fire consuming the Council flagship. The explosion shook the battlefield, blinding ships for miles. When the smoke cleared, the dreadnought was gone. The Council fleet faltered, their unity broken. Some ships fled, others fought on without command. The humans pressed the attack. Their small fleet, outnumbered and bloodied, now stood as hunters, and the hunters did not rest until the enemy scattered. The first great victory of Earth was won. The galaxy trembled. What was supposed to be the end of humanity had become their rise. News spread faster than light. On distant worlds, slaves whispered of freedom. Rebels spoke of hope. "They fought the Council and they won," they said. And for the first time the Council looked weak. On Earth, bells rang. People poured into the streets. They cheered the Armada. They cheered the fallen. They cheered the future. But the commander did not cheer. He stood in silence, staring at the stars. He knew the war was not over. The Council would return, stronger, angrier, with fleets beyond imagination. This was not the end. It was only the beginning. Still, a truth had been written in fire. Humanity was no longer the exile, no longer the outcast. They had fought, they had bled, and they had won. The war of return had begun, and the galaxy would never be the same again. The smoke of battle still hung over the Sol system. Wreckage drifted across the black, broken Council ships, spinning silently in the void. Human ships moved among the ruins, gathering survivors, repairing wounds and counting the dead. The first great victory had been won, but no one believed the war was over. The commander stood on the bridge of the Vigilant, his ship scarred and battered, but still alive. Reports came in from every fleet, voices of relief, voices of sorrow, voices of pride. The cost had been heavy, but humanity had done the impossible. They had faced the Council and they had survived. Across the galaxy the news spread like wildfire. Alien races who had lived in chains whispered of hope. They stood against the council, and they were not destroyed, they said. On slave worlds, workers lifted their eyes to the stars and dreamed of freedom. On conquered planets, rebels picked up weapons. Once more, the spark of Earth had become a flame, and that flame was spreading. The council was shaken. Never before had a young race defied them in open war. Never before had a council fleet been broken. In secret halls, alien leaders shouted, argued, cursed. Some demanded total war, others feared rebellion on their own worlds. For the first time in ages, the council was divided. The commander saw the moment. He knew humanity could not stand alone forever. To survive, they needed allies, but not the old alliances of fear and control. They needed something new, something greater. So he sent a message, not just to humans, but to every world, every race, every voice that had suffered under the council. His words were carried by traders, smugglers, pirates, and rebels. His voice echoed in hidden chambers, in caves, in slums, in battlefields. Humanity was cast out, he said. They exiled us, they tried to break us. They came with fire and steel, and still we stand. They call us rebels, but we are more. We are survivors, we are builders, we are fighters. And now we reach out to you, all who have known the council's chains, all who have felt their cruelty, all who dream of freedom. Join us, not as servants, not as subjects, but as equals. Together we can break the council, together we can build something greater, a new empire of the free. The words struck like thunder. Across the stars, voices answered. On distant mines, workers laid down their chains and swore to fight. On jungle worlds, hidden armies revealed themselves. Even some alien fleets turned their weapons against the council. The cracks became fractures, the fray. Keetras became storms. The galaxy was changing. Humanity stood at the center of it. The Armada grew. No longer only human ships, alien engineers added their designs. Alien soldiers joined the ranks. Ships of 100 races gathered under one banner, but the banner was not the Council's, it was Earth's. It carried not the mark of exile, but the mark of unity. The Council struck back, desperate to crush the rebellion. Their fleets burned across worlds, their armies marched through cities, but everywhere they went, resistance rose. Everywhere they turned, they faced humans and allies side by side. The war spread like a wildfire, faster than the Council could contain, and for the first time in history, the galaxy was not afraid of the Council. The galaxy was fighting back. The final battle came at Orion's gate. It was the heart of Council power, a fortress system. There stood the Grand Fleet, larger than any seen before, tens of thousands of ships, walls of fire and steel. It was meant to be a warning, a final wall against rebellion, but it became the battlefield where history would be written. The Armada of Earth arrived, not small, not secret, but vast and united. Human ships sailed at the front, their steel scarred but unbroken. Behind them came fleets of alien allies, once enemies, now brothers in war. The stars burned with the engines of freedom, and when the two forces met, the galaxy shook. The battle raged for days. Missiles screamed, beams carved through the dark, ships shattered like glass. Every moment was fire and blood. The Vigilant fought at the center, its cannons roaring, its armor breaking. The commander stood firm, his voice steady, even as the ship shook around him. "Forward," he said, "never stop. Today we break their chains forever." The council fought with fury, but their unity was gone. Some ships hesitated, some fled, some turned against their masters, and in that weakness humanity struck. The Vigilant and its allies cut through the heart of the Grand Fleet. They reached the Council's command ships. The final battle turned into slaughter. One by one, the Council's leaders fell, their fleets burning in silence. When the last dreadnought exploded, the war was over. The Council was broken, its power shattered. Worlds once enslaved rose in celebration. Chains were cast aside, flags of freedom raised. The old order was gone, and in its place rose something new. In the ruins of the council hall, the commander stood before races from every corner of the galaxy, humans, aliens, soldiers, workers, leaders, all gathered. He looked at them not as strangers, but as equals. "We were exiled," he said, his voice carrying across the hall. "We were cast out, forgotten, left to die. But we endured, we fought, we rose. And now we stand here together, not as slaves, not as outcasts, not as rivals, but as one. This is not the Council. This is the empire of humanity, an empire not of fear, but of unity, not of chains, but of freedom." The hall thundered with voices, human voices, alien voices, a chorus of hope. The galaxy had a new power, a new leader, a new dream. The empire of humanity was born. The commander looked once more to the stars. He remembered the day of exile, the shame, the anger, the fear. He remembered the whispers of defeat, the silence of despair, and he saw how far they had come, from ashes to fire, from exile to empire. And in the endless dark of space, the galaxy whispered a new truth. The Council had cast out Earth, but Earth had forged an Armada, Earth had forged an empire, and now humanity ruled the stars.